little bit about servicing and transporting. What I was saying about performance, very similar to A1 systems. That being said, there has to be more of a focus on safety because of the A2L classifications. And I'm not going to go through all of this, but what I do want to get across is there's good service practices that we should all follow that have been in place for a long time. Unfortunately, the more familiar you get with doing this work, whether it's just air conditioning, refrigeration, we start to take shortcuts, right? We're in a hurry, so we don't run nitrogen through the lines when we're brazing. We don't pull down to the designated vacuum level. Business dictates we do everything fast and get in and get out, right? This is a good time to go back to best practices, right? You may or may not be aware of the fact that when you charge a refrigerant, even an A1, into a system, it could be 410A, the lubricant that you're using is what's called miscible. That means that the refrigerant and the oil like to mix. So if you charge a system, some of the refrigerant ends up in the lubricant, and it will be the same with A2Ls. Now, you've got, a flammable component. So you break open a system, you do a quick vacuum, and now you're going to start brazing on it. Well, if the oil can, as the temperature goes up, can start to outgas and basically release the refrigerant. Not a huge deal in an A1 refrigerant. On the other hand, I have started R22 and mineral oil on fire. So it's going to be exacerbated by an A2L. So if it calls for a vacuum level, attain it, purge, with nitrogen, and be aware of what you're doing here. Use equipment that is specified for A2Ls. It's all out there. I've been surveying all the manufacturers. I'm sure Johnstone's got it in stock. In servicing this equipment, use only original OEM components. The aftermarket may catch up, but at this point in time, everything on the units, they'll have to make it intrinsically safe. They'll put it in different types of enclosures. So, only use OEM parts at this point in time. There is a requirement for the people building the equipment to provide detailed service installation guidelines. I mentioned that earlier. Read them and perhaps leave it for the next servicing contractor, right? So that they're totally aware of what you've done and how you've charged the equipment. This is just a little bit more on servicing. Use inert gas, I'd already mentioned. There may be some rules in place that you have to vent your vacuum pump to a safe location away from where you're working. Again, leak checking, create a service log, and all I can really say is follow the OEM's guidelines. They're going through all of this stuff with UL and the rest of it. So do it right, do it safe. And if they call for example, triple evacuation before you do something, then just follow the rules. And everyone's going to have to do the same thing. Couple things about, I find this interesting. The equipment that's going to be built, and everyone that I've surveyed from an OEM standpoint, are going to use the same equipment connections that you've seen on everything else you've always worked on, 1/4-inch male flare, etc. They have to paint them red. Otherwise, they are the same connections, right? This is a guideline, by HRI. They've been pretty involved. So from our knowledge, all the OEMs are just following this guideline. Now the cylinders are different. The guideline is to go to left-handed threads. That'll be both on the disposables and on the returnable cylinders. Honeywell is going to follow their recommendations, but don't really sweat it. All the aftermarket companies have already made adapters for the cylinders to get you over to if you're used to using 1/4-inch flare hoses, etc. It's all, in the works, and you'll be able to buy those adapters. But I find it interesting that, you can say right hand on the equipment you're servicing, but you had to go left hand on the cylinders, but it is what it is. And Honeywell is going to follow that, as I said, the guidelines as close as we can. Transporting. There's a lot in flux here. Basically, transport these cylinders like any other flammable gas. There's requirements for vans under DOT, you know, how many pounds you can carry, that sort of thing. I won't go into it here. I heard you mentioned ESCO training. They go into really depth there on what you need to do. Initially, they wanted everything shipped in an upright position. There appears to be some relaxation on that. There's been an exemption. I don't know how or where we are in obtaining that exemption. But we did get some information that those semi-horizontal racks and service vans should be okay if you position the relief valve on these new cylinders, the disposables, you know, up in the 12 o'clock position. There's more to come on that sort of thing. Let's see.
Just real quick, Ron, and I don't think we've covered this yet. Our traditional refrigerant tanks, our A1 tanks, had a rupture disc on them.
Correct.
Right? So pressurization. The A2L tanks will actually have a pressure relief valve. That rupture disc is gone. And so that's what we refer to. That relief valve has to be in contact with the vapor space. So that's why they originally said upright. But now they're saying basically if you can position the tank in that 45-degree bottle rack so and you make sure that pressure relief is on the vapor space, then we should be okay. I don't know if that's official yet, but seems like where it's going.
That seems like where it's going, Eric. That's correct. And we keep trying to get as much as we can from, you know, Department of Transportation. But I do know that Jason at ESCO is all over it, and he can supply documentation, I believe. But that's our understanding. We're still in the mix of figuring out our 100-pound cylinders. Yeah, on whether or not we have to ship those upright. I do know that one company got an exemption. We think we can get onto it, but it'll be a problem for us if we have to ship all of our code 10s upright. We'd have to put them in basically cased pallets and that sort of thing. But we're working on it. One other thing.
I was just going to point out real quick too, Ron, is please note that this top bullet point here says, you know, A2Ls must be transported in the same manner as other flammable gases. We're not talking about A1s, right? They have to be transported as same as flammable gases.
That's correct. Interesting. And Eric and team, you guys can check on this. I heard recently that based on the amount of pounds you can carry under the DOT as a service, I think they call it something of trade. You're allowed so many pounds of flammables, right? That would be your settling and all that sort of thing. Now A2Ls will go into that, and I think there's a limit, and that limit may exclude carrying a code 210 cylinder in a service van. Something to look into. I just heard it the end of last week. So I've got to dive into that just to somebody take a note on that.
Yeah, that is one of our fears here in California right now. As all the DOT, California Fire Code, Mechanical Code are all being changed because of A2Ls. That is one of our fears right now, is we're going to have this limitation. Yeah.
So a code 210 laying on its belly in the back of a service van may not be good to go under even federal DOT. Got to figure that out.
Yeah.
Right.